Welcome into the Five Guys here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. That's how it got the name. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. It's lunchtime. We should try to get that sponsor. And we've got Alex Donno. You can follow him, of course, at Alex Donno and his fine work all over these internets. We are sponsored here today by, we'll start with that, and then we'll get to the show. Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the Five Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with Five Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection. Donno, so let's start there. What jersey number is Odell Beckham going to wear?
Oh, what is he? Well, I guess he can't wear 13, right? Or are they going to
No.
unretire it for a special occasion? But Ethan, I got to tell you, man, and I know our guy Louis D. Sung, when we bring him on, he may laugh at me, he may disagree with me. Honestly, I don't know where he stands on this, but I had been throughout the day today talking myself into the idea that I would love to see Odell Beckham Jr. in a Miami Dolphins uniform, with the obvious caveat being, you can't pay him what Baltimore was paying him last year. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens paid him $15 million last season. He's just not a $15 million receiver right now. But, you and I, we were talking throughout the day. One of the things, like, schematically that Odell could do for you is, allow you to line up Jalen Waddle a lot more in the slot, because Odell Beckham Jr., he's an outside guy. 80% or so of his snaps are taken on the outside and at the boundary. So, it allows you to do a little bit more with Waddle. But the reason why people can argue till they're blue in the face about, well, this option, this other option may be a better third receiver option for the Dolphins. But throughout his career, the difficulty of catches he's capable of making and the flashes of that signature OBJ and athleticism that he is still capable of showing you, I think to this day, make me understand that if you can get a guy who's proven so much on the field in years past in New York, and he got his Super Bowl ring in Los Angeles a few years ago, I love the idea of it, as long as you're not breaking the bank to do it. And it's not like the Dolphins have a whole lot of cap flexibility to break the bank anyway. But now, obviously, the flip side with Odell is you've got to do a damn good job when it comes to your team doctors in going through the physicals, because he's had the well-noted knee issues. I mean, he had torn ACL, I think, in the same knee multiple different times. 2 different times he's had that same knee repaired, and he's going to be 32 years old. He turns that in November, so that's going to be smack dab in the middle of the season. So there definitely is an injury risk there. And sometimes, Ethan, I gravitate towards the shiny objects, and you're not going to find too many shinier objects out there this offseason than Odell Beckham Jr.
Right. So I'm going to acknowledge at the start here that I'm old. So I have some, I say that pretty much on every episode here, but that colors my judgment on this somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
I have been through a lot of these with the Dolphins bringing in guys who were name receivers somewhere else. And for the most part, it has not worked out. The one notable exception is their current best player, Tyreek Hill. But I go way back to Jimmy Johnson bringing in Fred Barnett, Brett Perryman, right down the line, guys who had been very productive 1,000-yard receivers in other places. Irving Fryer was an exception prior to that, where he did pan out in Miami. Even some of the bigger names, Mike Wallace's career was kind of checkered, I would say. Brandon Marshall was good. I don't know that he necessarily delivered what they anticipated or what he had done in Denver. So I'm always hesitant on this kind of stuff. I do think it comes down to price. It also comes down to expectation, because this is an offense built around Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua's ability to get the ball out quickly to them. I'll get to Aaron's comment here in a second because it's another thing that concerns me. It is seriously because this team is becoming like a reality show. In a lot of ways, they've already got Berrios. They re-signed, has a reality girlfriend.
Yeah.
Jordan Poyer has a reality wife, and now you're going to bring in the ultimate beyond all of it. I mean, it won't last very long, most likely, based on her track record. But I'm just saying, it's that's another thing to consider here is that a bit of a circus show. The Dolphins become even more of an attraction to the national media, and so I just think you have to know kind of what you're getting, and he's got to know what the expectation level is, which is that, and I think he does because when he went to the Rams and helped them win a Super Bowl, and of course got hurt in that Super Bowl, he did what they asked him to do. He kind of fit in as the 2 or 3 receiver. He didn't make a spectacle of himself, and I think the same has to be true here. They've got enough off the field issues to deal with some of the stuff that Tyreek is handling, and they just don't need more of it. And so I just whatever they decide with him, he has to have an expectation that he's being brought in to complement on the number 1 offense in the league. Again, until the cold weather hit, It was the number 1 offense in the league for most of the year. And he can help them in the cold weather. He's been in those big games. He played, obviously, for the Giants. He played at a high level for a long time. And I just think fans need to temper expectations. I know what Lewis is going to say here, which is that he wanted Michael Thomas. I know that because he put a Take 5 on our site. And there are other name receivers out there. And it just seems like, and Barry has been tweeting this, that this is the guy they locked in on. And again, I understand it. You talk about degree of difficulty catches, playing in a Super Bowl. He brings that pedigree. He brings some toughness as a receiver. He brings more size than obviously they have with their 2 current guys. But everybody's got to be on the same page with this contract. Maybe there's incentives involved, but you can't make the incentives so much, Alex, that then all of a sudden he expects to be treated like a number 1 receiver. He is not a number 1 receiver anymore. He's a number 3 receiver. And we can debate whether he's the best one they can find, but he would slot in ahead of Craycraft, Berrios, and Double E, probably, and they might draft a guy also. So this is Hill and Waddle's team, and he would essentially be the 3rd guy.
Yeah, I expected more from Berrios last year than what the Dolphins got. And obviously, he can still play a role for this team, and that includes special teams, not just at wide receiver. But I think that based on the way that last year went, I think it makes, a move like this, whether Odell is the one that fans want or not, but it makes a move like this necessary to help bring the Dolphins offense to the next level. And yeah, OBJ, he has to understand, like you said, and that's going to be made very clear to him. I mean, he knows Tyreek Hill is here. He's got to understand what Jalen Waddle already is and what Waddle's going to become because he's not hit his ceiling yet. I mean, we know who Tyreek Hill is exactly, but Waddle to me is still an ascending player, and he's going to be here after, Tyreek Hill moves on from Miami. So Odell has to understand what his role would be here. I think one of the things that, that I've been really brushing up on since the Dolphins seem to be zoning in on OBJ is that I think just kind of based on the money he was making last year and not delivering on that, I think a lot of people just kind of jumped to the idea that he just didn't have a good season at all last year. And I think that's a little bit overstated, again, based on the money, maybe not so much. But, last season, and yeah, he was playing in, a better offense than he'd been playing in his time in Cleveland, for example. But, catch and passes from Lamar Jackson, he had 565 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, just in terms of the receiving yardage, that's actually the best, most productive year OBJ had since 2019, his first year in Cleveland. So it was somewhat of a bounce back year. I know he's got the knee concerns and the age concerns, but to me, as a Dolphin fan, I look at it, you're not adding OBJ again to be your first or second receiver. You'd be adding this guy to be your 3rd receiver. And I think he can play that role at the right price. Now, from his perspective, I think same thing. This is the type of place where if you sign deals like these, you can extend your career, not being relied upon to be the first guy. I think he gives you an opportunity to not have a massive snap count because I don't think he can be counted on to play a big number of snaps at this point in his career, but that could work out well here. And, if he does have to take presumably a little or a lot less money than he made last year, hopefully that burden is eased by Florida being a non-state income tax state. So hopefully he understands that he's going to be banking a little bit more than he was banking in, Maryland and certainly in Los Angeles in previous years. So I think this could be a fit, like you said, but then, yeah, The other concern about it would be with the Dolphins, who were literally on a reality show last season, would they become too much of a reality show with
Right.
some of the wives and girlfriends that are hanging around this team now?
Yeah, and again, there's nothing you can do about that for the most part, but it's just like this is like the ultimate. This is like bringing in the LeBron James of reality show magnets, essentially, and is so. And we know that this is a team that gets talked about a little bit on First Take and those shows because they like to come at Tua. But this brings a whole nother element because I mean I made fun of the Odell Beckham coverage about a year ago because it was constant every day. Those stupid shows on ESPN are talking Odell Beckham, but he was not an elite receiver anymore. Like I mean, you had guys like Justin Jefferson doing their thing, others. Nobody's talking about them, and they're talking about Beckham, who really made an all-time catch. What is it now? 7 years ago? I mean, what it's a long time. So I do think that it does bring a little bit more spotlight. You got to make sure it's all worth it. But I think as long as there's an expectation level, the other thing here, and we're going to bring Lewis on right after the break, is that, Greer has a reputation of bringing in guys who have had injuries. And so if you're going to bring in that guy, you have to protect yourself. Like they finally did that with Teron Armstead this time with the restructuring of the contract. And Armstead's a terrific player for 10 games a season. Okay. And so now they've brought in another swing tackle and all the rest of that. They have to protect themselves. They have to have another option at the 3 because going out and trading for, Chase Claypool was a disaster last year. The guy didn't run the right routes. He didn't fit in. He made key mistakes. So it has to be Odell and somebody else. Whether you draft someone or you're confident in Eric Ezukama or whatever it is, there's got to be a backup plan there because you bring in injured guys, especially late in their careers, they tend to get injured again. That's just what happens. I mean, you can talk about the better weather and all that, but ultimately, if a knee is damaged, there probably is going to be a recurrence at some point. All right, we're going to tell you about another sponsor, then we'll bring in Lewis to get his opinion on this. Our friends over at Water Cleanup of Florida, you can find them at WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com. We call it your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop, but it's not just cleanup. Do the preventative maintenance. That way you don't have to deal with insurance companies afterwards. Reach out to Michael Robert and his team based at Boca Raton. Huge Miami sports fans. Their entire warehouse is like a shrine to Miami sports. They got more Haslam stuff than I do. But check it out, WCUFL.com. They'll handle everything for you. And if they can't, and this is one of the things I really like about them because we've encountered this with them, they'll tell you. They'll find somebody else to do it. If it's not a job for them, they're not going to do it and then charge you for it if they're not going to do it correctly. They got more than almost 20 years of combined experience at this stage, fully certified and all the rest of it. And they service all 3 counties. Check them out. Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz, they got the guts. All right, let's bring on Lewis Sung. Again, you can catch his Take 5 from a few days ago on our platform here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. You can also catch his work on Fins Nation and Pulse of Fins Nation, which airs every Tuesday night, usually at around 7:30. Lewis, you were a proponent of them bringing in another receiver, but this is not the receiver you said. And that receiver that you wanted is still out there. So give me the case for Michael Thomas, the slant god, or whatever it is that they call him, tends to interact with fans in an interesting way on Twitter and other places. Can't Stop Mike or something like that, or Odell Beckham, because they both bring their own personalities. They've both been elite in the past, but it seems like Beckham has more of the injury history here that would be concerning. Why do you like Thomas over Beckham still?
I mean, I chose Michael Thomas because at the time it seemed like there was chatter about the fact that he was going to be available. And I also knew the fact that he was cut by the New Orleans Saints. That meant that he would not count against the compensatory formula. So that was one of my main things with Michael Thomas. However, I actually did, excuse me. I actually did record a Take 5 last night for OBJ. I feel bad for Manny. I just now that I'm trying to do one every day, it's like I just put more work on him. But either way, it hasn't gone up yet. But regardless, the Odell Beckham,
it's 10 points against Manny, so we'll get that out.
No. Give Manny a break. I put too much work on him. But in any case, the Odell Beckham Jr. thing, when I heard it, I thought to myself, okay, I'm not really 100% sure how I feel about this. I know for a fact that Odell Beckham Jr. he has a reputation, but so does Michael Thomas, right? Like in many ways, they are very similar in their off the field endeavors. They have their own moments. They've had their own issues, but in, like you mentioned, Ethan, in OBJ's case. But yeah, there's a lot of injury history with OBJ, but I would argue that part of the reason Michael Thomas fell off a cliff the way that he did was also because of his injury. So in some regard, you're getting the same kind of player. You're looking for a guy who's coming off of off years, who's trying to recapture the old magic, as it were. But in OBJ's case, at the very least, with Odell Beckham Jr., we saw him do what he did in Baltimore. And you look at his stats, like you look at his numbers. Is it anything wow worthy? No. But you had 35 catches for 565 yards. You had it for 3 touchdowns. So all in all, that's pretty good for a number 3 wide receiver. And if you look at it, like according to I'll put this in the OnlyFins, which again, only $3 a month to sign up there and get in on the best Dolphins talk out there, better than Twitter. I'll say that.
$2.99 for Off the Floor. By the way, we're a penny cheaper on the basketball side. Off the Floor.
You're telling me I can get both of those for a combined $5.99 a month, less than I pay for a cup of coffee.
Off the Floor. Alf has enough subscribers. Does not need any more subscribers. Okay, he's getting a big head about this thing. Go to Off the Floor. Subscribe there. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, Lewis.
All right. Anyway, so yeah, the thing with OBJ is that if the numbers show that based on the receivers that were in Baltimore, he was Odell Beckham with all the talk about whether or not he was any good or not. He was number 2 on the team as far as his actual numbers. So if you think about that, now the Ravens let him go, and the discussion becomes, well, why did the Ravens let him go to begin with if he was already going to be so special to them? Well, he signed a 1-year deal. That's number one. So maybe they think that the young guys that are on the team now, they developed enough to the point where they don't need to throw another $15 million at Odell Beckham Jr. And if that is the case, I'm sure that he's visiting Miami. He's looking at the situation and saying, okay, what can I do to get myself back into the game? And if he really wants, and I'm being serious about this, if he wants to try to revitalize his career, he should try to get in on this Miami Dolphins thing, because you're still going to have Tyreek. You're still going to have Jalen Waddle. Odell Beckham Jr., for all his issues, and I feel like some of them are a little overblown, for all of his issues, the man has incredible catching talent. He has very strong hands, very rarely ever drops any passes. He is somebody that you can count on to get the job done in a pinch. Like we literally saw it against Miami, him making that incredible very rarely, that's like this two-handed catch, 2 feet down, and a lot of Dolphins fans, and at the time myself included, were like, no, that's not a catch. Then we saw the replay and we're like, oh yeah, actually no, that was a catch. And you look at his just watch his highlight reel. He still has a lot to offer. He's very reliable. And Lamar Jackson, we love to talk about how elite he is, how athletic he is, and I was the one who went on record saying he's the best player in the NFL just because his level of speed, his level of strength, his level of athleticism, it can't be matched. What Patrick Mahomes brings better, obviously, is he's a better passer. But Lamar Jackson is enough to get the job done. That said, Lamar Jackson has his knuckleball issues. And OBJ made a lot of really good catches to bail him out of a jam. Mm-hmm. And if he can do that for Tua, if he can just get in he made a lot of slant routes right in the middle of the field. That's Tua's bread and butter. Odell Beckham Jr. would be a very excellent depth addition to what the Miami Dolphins can do. And I see Aaron Andrews talking about Tyler Boyd. I personally would go with OBJ just because, again, 31 years old. He's coming off of a decent year. He doesn't have a lot that he can push as leverage. Maybe we end up giving him $8 million a year. I'd be okay with $8 million for Odell Beckham Jr. for 1 year. And again, they're not going to it's not a long-term investment. We're not giving this guy a 4-year deal. So for all intents and purposes, if Odell Beckham Jr. really wants to come to Miami, this is the first that we've heard that he's going to be visiting anybody. This is the first real interest we've heard about him. I'll take him. I'm happy. We don't need Michael Thomas if we can get Odell Beckham Jr.
So it turns out we do agree. I wasn't sure, Lewis, if we were going to agree on this or not, but I'm pretty much in lockstep with everything you said there. But on the flip side, what would be the concerns? Like if the Dolphins were to get like a cap-friendly, obviously, deal and a discount compared to what he was making last year in Baltimore for Odell Beckham Jr., what would be your primary concerns about bringing that player in?
I mean, Ethan brought it up, like Kim Kardashian, all that nonsense. Like I've said it. I said it on the Take 5 that hasn't been posted yet. Is that I personally I do not want to see another Taylor Swift situation. I was one of the ones who was annoyed by the fact that every 5 seconds, oh, we're cutting back to Taylor Swift. We're
She
cutting
helped them
back to
win a
Taylor
Super
Swift.
Bowl, though. I mean, she brought some good luck to the team, clearly.
I'll give Taylor Swift this. Thank you for raising the salary cap for Miami.
Yes.
Because they gave more money. So let's put it this way. If Kim Kardashian getting flashed every 6 seconds on the screen every time Odell Beckham Jr. literally does anything, even if so much as sneezes on the field, they go up to Kim Kardashian in the booth, I'll appreciate the increased salary cap that comes next season because we still have to actually pay Jalen Waddle and them. So with that said, the concerns, obviously, injuries. The concerns are public relations. Figure something out. So George wants to see him and Tom. I get that. I get the drama. I get the drama. I do. But at this point, what's a little more? Miami's already as dramatic as it possibly can be at this point. You already have Tyreek.
Let me ask you a real quick follow-up to that. Did you, because I know that a lot of Dolphin fans thought that, that Hard Knocks may have had something to do with derailing the season. Like, where do you stand on, having, whether it's preseason or in-season Hard Knocks? Because obviously we saw, the 2012 team that had Hard Knocks underperformed. We saw the team kind of go down the toilet during the in-season Hard Knocks. Is drama, where does that list among your places of concern?
I don't like. It's fun for the fans to watch it. I don't like from a football perspective. I don't like Hard Knocks because all it does is distract them from the real issues. Because you constantly, regardless of whether, even if you try your best to ignore the camera, it's still there. You see it. You're suddenly on guard. Everything that you do can and will be recorded for either posterity or it's going to be used against you in some way. So this is the kind of stuff that I personally feel like just keep the cameras away from this because these HBO
my favorite part of that was Fangio was in one episode, I think, for 30 seconds. It was so apparent how much he hated the entire thing. I don't know if he was contractually obligated to appear there for a second. I guess he didn't want what was going on behind the scenes because all of his players hated him. We didn't really know that at the time, but I'm with you on that. I think that it's funny, they've swung so far the other direction in some ways, except the way they deal with us, which is, that's a whole nother story. But they went from being this insular organization, everything's private, everything's bottled up, to, okay, we're going to put it on blast out there for the entire world. And I get it because McDaniel has this engaging personality. I think it's impossible not to like Mike. Okay. And I appreciate that he's opened it up somewhat, but yeah, they don't really need the circus show this year. I think it went too far that direction. And so that honestly, it's a legitimate concern. I don't, because again, like I said, I was saying before you came on, this is not just some reality star. This is the reality star who invented reality stars. This is literally a 20-year run on a show that if I have to watch it for more than 3 minutes, I vomit. But that's basically, that's what you were going to be dealing with here for as long as they're together, which might be a month. But it is something to consider. I want to close here with the football part of this, though, Lewis, as we go forward. I think what you mentioned about Baltimore and him being kind of their second most reliable target is important because it's not just that Tua is more accurate than Lamar, okay, which I think is fair to say. Even those who are Lamar stands like you and me will say that. But also the volume is going to go up because we know Mike doesn't want to run.
Right.
So, as your third receiver, he's going to see a lot less attention than he did in other places because all the attention in this game plan, even with Waddle out there, goes to 10. Okay, so he's going to see a lot less attention there. And again, if Tua has a wobbler here or there, he can go up and get it. The football side of it, again, as long as he can stay on the field, I get it. I think his catch numbers could go up just because they're going to throw more than Baltimore did. Because unlike Lamar, Tua is not going to pull it down and run with it. And we've talked about how he needs to. He's not going to on a consistent basis, not like Lamar is, right? So it wouldn't stun me if Beckham had 45, 50 catches, again, provided he's going to play 15, 16, 17 games.
And that's the thing that is about, right? Because the Ravens very much were a run-first kind of football team. They're looking at it from the perspective of this is the guy that they want to be a backup wide. He's a backup wide receiver. He's not your main guy. Mind you, as far as his most reliable, like you said, the second most reliable target, I would have to say that was actually Mark Andrews, their tight end.
Right.
So keep that in mind, because tight ends are a big deal in the Baltimore Ravens.
I mean, Jonnu Smith, we're hoping, but we don't know how much they're going to use the tight end this year because they didn't use him last year as much as we thought they were going to use Smythe. So I just think that there's volume to be eaten up here by a more physical receiver. And when you talk about a guy who can go up and get it, they haven't had a lot of those. Like I go back to Chambers, like that was sort of Chris's thing. Chris would make the impossible sideline leaping catch, and then he'd drop one right in his hands over the middle, and you'd be like, what the hell's going on here? But Chris had that capability. They haven't had, I mean, Gadsden during that time, but again, it would take Arande about 3 years to get 10 yards. But have they had a lot of like go up and get it type guys?
Remember they had Chris Carter for 1 year when he was like 40. I remember him making
he was dreadful.
But I remember him making one great grab in the back of the end zone where you're like, how did he snatch that up? But did nothing else that year.
And Alex, then he cost them the season because they were 9-5. I was there. They went up to Minnesota. And he dropped one in the end zone in Minnesota. Remember, Gary Anderson made a kick at the end, and that put the Dolphins in a position where if they lost in New England, they were out of the playoffs. And, of course, they took a big lead in New England and stopped running Ricky and were knocked out of the playoffs. But that was what Carter was supposed to be, but they really haven't had that guy. Right. All right. So you are – just to close, before we close here, thanks to our sponsors, 305 Jerseys. Again, follow and Water Cleanup. And, again, follow Lewis's work. You are both in favor of this move, right? At the right price, Alex?
Yeah, at the right price, yes. If they, I don't think they're going to give them a boatload with their cap situation. So maybe that's why that's why we haven't heard anything new since the visit was actually taking place. Like, did we know exactly what time did anybody track OBJ's plane to figure out when he's actually showing up?
He might still be there, right? I mean, I know that it was a Thursday visit. I think he got there pretty early in the morning. Maybe he's still there, or maybe
they had to call the Keeping Up with the Kardashians cameras to make sure that they were there, getting him on the way out. Like, this is a whole production. Look, he had to know what time it is as far as the money, right? Like, I mean, right? His agent has got to be telling. I don't even know who is his agent again. It's not Drew, right? So I feel like all they do is sign Drew guys. Honestly, like it's like literally, if you want to know who the Dolphins are going to sign, just watch the segment right after me on WSBN because Drew is always on right after me on Sunday nights, and literally Drew will just because it's all his clients. Like that. Seriously, the Dolphins are getting back to the way they were in the '90s, where they just sign his guys. All right, so I don't know that OBJ needs that, George, but yeah, maybe. All right, Lewis. So you're in favor, right price. Alex is in favor, right price. And I guess I'm in favor because it'll increase our YouTube numbers. So make sure you subscribe to the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Subscribe to Fids Nation. That's it, Lewis. All Fids Nation, Pulse of Fids Nation episodes. OBJ next year. That's it. Nothing else. You can talk to a little bit, but that's it. Just OBJ.
We still got Tyreek though. Yeah.
Yeah. That may be better if we stay away from some of that stuff. Anyway, thanks to Alex. Thanks to Lewis. Thanks to everybody. Make sure, again, you hit that like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. Tonight, if you're watching this, new episode of Floor is Yours. Alex should be hosting tonight with Brian Fonseca, Timothy Bain, and Tony Schwartz. So check that out on the channel. We'll be on at 9 o'clock. Alex and I'll be back on Tuesday. Oh, no.